How many times this week have you lost your patience with your child? Don't ask yourself if it happened. Ask yourself how many times. Because most parents lie awake at night thinking about exactly that. About the voice they raised too loud. About the punishment that once again changed absolutely nothing. About that moment when they looked their child in the eyes and saw themselves as a little kid, scared, confused, unable to understand why the adult they loved most in the world was so completely out of control. And the hardest part of all is that the next day, it happens again. Today we're going to talk about something Japanese parents have been doing for centuries. Something so counterintuitive that when you first hear it, your gut reaction will be to say it can't possibly work. But by the time this video ends, you're going to see parenting in a completely different way. And more importantly, you're going to walk away with real tools backed by science that you can start using in your home tonight. Before we go any further, I need you to do something. Think about the last time your child had a full meltdown, a real one. Screaming, crying, throwing themselves on the floor, not listening to a single word you said. What did you do? If you're being honest with yourself, you probably tried to stop it as fast as possible. Maybe you raised your voice. Maybe you threatened to take something away. Maybe you bargained, made promises, gave in to something you didn't want to give into. Or maybe you just exploded because you'd had a terrible day and you had nothing left. And I'm not judging you. Not at all. Because that is exactly the response the human brain is wired to produce when it perceives a stressful or threatening situation. Act, control, solve. Make it stop as quickly as possible. The problem is that with children, that response doesn't work. And science has been telling us that for decades. Researchers at Harvard University have spent years studying why Japanese children consistently show significantly higher levels of emotional self-regulation than Western children. And the answer isn't genetic. It's not something mysterious in the water in Tokyo. It's something far more concrete and far more accessible than you might think. It's the way Japanese parents respond in the moments of highest tension. And it has a name. The first concept is called ma. In Japanese, ma is a word with no direct translation. It means the space between two moments, the pause that carries meaning, the silence that isn't empty but full of something important. In traditional Japanese architecture, ema is the empty space in a room that gives meaning to everything surrounding it. In Japanese music, ma is the note that isn't played, and that makes every note that is played land exactly the way it should. And in parenting, ma is what a Japanese parent does when their child starts to fall apart emotionally. They do nothing, at least not right away. And here is the biggest and most widespread misunderstanding about Japanese parenting. When a Japanese parent doesn't immediately step in to stop a tantrum, it isn't because they don't care about their child. It isn't coldness, it isn't indifference. It's because they understand something fundamental about how a child's brain works in that moment. When a child is in the middle of a full meltdown, the rational part of their brain, the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for making decisions, understanding consequences, processing what you're saying to them, is literally offline. The child in that state cannot process your words. They cannot learn anything. They cannot calm down just because someone is asking them to. They only feel. They're only surviving that moment of emotional overwhelm. Stepping in at that moment with punishments, with yelling, with negotiations or moral lessons doesn't just fail to help. According to research by Dr. Daniel Siegel, a neuroscientist at the University of California, Los Angeles, and one of the world's leading experts on child brain development, actively interrupting that process can actually make it harder for children to learn to regulate themselves on their own over time. Ma is not emotional abandonment. It is active trust. It is saying to the child without words, with the calm presence of an adult who hasn't lost control, I believe in you. I know you can get through this. I'm here, but this is your path to walk. And when the storm passes, and it always passes, that is exactly when the Japanese parent moves closer, calmly, with connection. Not to analyze what happened, not to scold or explain why that behavior wasn't okay, just to reconnect. A hand on the shoulder, a steady gaze, a presence. Because the message the child receives isn't that their emotion was bad or dangerous, or that they need to suppress it in order to be loved. The message is, big feelings pass, and I am always here when they do. That, repeated hundreds of times across childhood, builds something no punishment in the world can build. A nervous system that knows how to calm itself. A child who, when something inside them starts to feel overwhelming, doesn't panic. Because they already know, because they've lived it so many times that this too will pass. Now I know what you're thinking. So I just ignore the tantrums and that's it? No. And here is the most important nuance in everything we're going to cover today. Ma works because it always comes paired with something Japanese parents call amai. Amai is a concept that roughly translates to the security of knowing you can depend on another person's love. Not love that gets earned through good behavior. Not love that disappears when the child fails. Unconditional love. The absolute certainty, deep in the child's bones, that their parent is there. Always. No matter what. No matter what they do. In the earliest years of life, Japanese parents are extraordinarily physically close with their children. Physical contact is constant. Emotional closeness is constant. There is no fear of spoiling a child by offering too much warmth. Because modern neuroscience is very clear on this. A child who has a foundation of secure attachment, meaning a child who knows at the deepest level of their being that they are loved without conditions, develops a nervous system that is significantly more capable of regulating itself under stress. They don't need to act out to get attention because they already have the attention they need. They don't need to constantly test limits to feel safe because they already feel safe from the inside. Amai isn't weakness. It isn't overprotection. It isn't raising dependent, incapable children. It is the fertile soil from which self-discipline grows naturally. In Western culture, we often confuse firmness with coldness. We think that if we are too emotionally close, our children won't learn to be independent, to handle frustration, to face the world on their own. But the data across decades says the exact opposite. Children with secure attachment are on average more independent, more resilient, and more capable of managing their emotions than children whose early attachment was anxious or insecure. Warmth first, structure second, never the other way around. And that brings us to the third pillar. The one that surprises Western parents the most when they first discover it. Did you know that in the vast majority of Japanese schools there is no cleaning staff? The children themselves clean their classrooms, their hallways, their cafeterias every single day. At 4 years old, at 5, at 6. Without anyone reminding them every morning. Without arguments, without complaints, without endless negotiation. When Western researchers ask Japanese teachers how they manage to make this happen, they always get the same answer. We don't make it happen. It's simply what we do. And that sentence, so simple, so seemingly obvious, contains absolutely everything. In Japan, children don't clean because someone told them to. They clean because they see themselves as people who take care of their space. Responsibility isn't a rule imposed from the outside through threats and consequences. It's an identity built from the inside, through small daily rituals repeated until they become part of who you are. Developmental psychologists call this identity formation through behavior. And it is one of the most robust and consistent findings in decades of child psychology research. The identity a child builds about themselves in their early years, I am someone capable, I am someone responsible, I am someone who contributes and who matters, is infinitely more powerful than any system of rewards and punishments. Because rewards and punishments work while they're present. When they disappear, the behavior tends to disappear with them. But an identity built brick by brick through daily repetition and consistent example, that stays. That travels with the child everywhere they go. And the way Japanese parents build that identity is simple, not spectacular, almost boring to watch from the outside. They give the child small responsibilities from a very early age. Setting the table before dinner, putting away toys when playtime is over, packing their own bag for the next day. Not because the parent needs that help to function, but because the daily ritual, repeated without drama, without a special prize, without fanfare, tells the child something far more valuable than any occasional praise. This is what we do. This is who we are in this family. And children who are extraordinary machines for absorbing identity from the moment they're born, believe it. And they become it. At this point, I want to be completely honest with you. Because Japanese parenting isn't perfect. There are aspects of Japanese social culture that place enormous pressure on children as they grow up and face the outside world. The extreme academic demands, the crushing weight of social conformity, the difficulty of expressing what you feel when it conflicts with what the group expects. These are real elements that exist and that we cannot and should not ignore. But the three principles we've looked at today, ma, amai, and identity building through everyday ritual, aren't exclusively Japanese in the sense that they only work there. They are principles backed by decades of developmental psychology research that work in any family, in any culture, in any city, in any country in the world. You don't need to be Japanese to learn to pause when your child is at their emotional limit. You don't need to be Japanese to build a foundation of unconditional love from which your child can explore the world with confidence. You don't need to be Japanese to introduce small daily rituals that tell your child over and over again who they are and what they're capable of. You just need to start with one thing. This week. The next time your child has a meltdown, try giving them 10 seconds before you step in. Just 10 seconds. Not to ignore them, not to turn your back, but to observe. To breathe yourself. To trust that something in them is trying to find its way back to calm. And when it's over, move closer. No analysis, no lesson, no reminder of what went wrong. Just connection, just presence. Just the most important message a child can ever receive. I'm here. Everything is okay. You are loved exactly the same as before. After a few weeks of doing this consistently, tell me what you notice. Because what you'll probably discover isn't just that your child has changed. It's that you have changed. And when the adult finds calm, the child cannot help but find it too. If this video gave you something to think about, share it with another parent who needs to hear it today. And if you want to keep learning about child psychology and the parenting approaches that are transforming families all over the world, subscribe. There is a lot more coming.